How do you sort out the so-called jargon from real-world practices that work? Do the members of your organization find some business or technology advice utterly confusing? Welcome to Real Talk with Sam Holcman. In this program, we set the record straight, and in terms that business people and technology people can understand. Now, here is your host, Sam Holcman.
Welcome to this edition of Real Talk. I'm Sam Holcman, and the topic for this broadcast is the difference between enterprise architecture and the enterprise architect. There seems to be an incredible amount of confusion on this particular topic, and the reason I'm bringing it up today is I just finished up a consulting engagement today with a client, and they were posing this question to me. What are all these different architectural phrases that people have out there? And we have cataloged ourselves 167 titles from our client base. I'm not laughing at our clients. I'm just saying this is what we cataloged that have the phrase or term architecture in it. We published literally decades ago what we call the Architects in an Enterprise, and that is accompanied by what we call the Enterprise Framework. I didn't say Enterprise Architecture Framework. I said the Enterprise Framework, a framework for all of the different architects in an enterprise. And so what we've done is laid out the 12 architects in an enterprise and how they relate to each other, not through definitions alone, but what they actually produce. And this is one of the problems. People have these, phrases they put together, 11 words, 12 words, 23 words. And of course, the problem with words is that each word has a meaning that may have multiple meanings depending on who the audience is. So long definitions really aren't going to do it, but a representation of what each one of these architects does is really helpful, and that's what we've done. And of course, that's available to you on our website, architecturescoe.org, or eacoe.org, or bacoe.org. You can download this. So what are those 12 architects? I'm just going to list them for you here in this short broadcast. The enterprise architect, the business architect, the policy rule architect, the rule assertion architect, the rule assertion architecture, the process architect, the data architect, the roles architect, the workflow architect, the logistics architect, the technology architect, the event sequence architect, and the event states architect. So these 12 architectural roles are what we see as the architects in an enterprise. Now, if you didn't hear your title on this quick named understanding, and if you haven't looked at the graphical representation of each one of these so you can see what each of these architectural roles actually produce, then what you're probably doing is what we call implementation architectures. Now, the parallel there is that in the physical world, we have engineering and manufacturing, and both require architecture. It's not one is right and one is wrong. So, for example, a very common architectural title that we see out there is information architect. Now, what we need to do is to first define what we mean by information, and then we can add the term architect to that, and then we can figure out what that means. So let me do that for you as an example. To us, an information architect takes the work of two architects, and that's because we define information. Remember, we have to do that first. Information is processed data. You can probably tell very quickly what that composite architectural view is. It takes the work of the data architect and the work of the process architect and builds a composite model. Is that wrong? No. Is that architecture? We suggest it's an implementation architecture role and not an architecture role. So this really simplifies the world of architecture, enterprise architecture, when we recognize that the enterprise architect is different than enterprise architecture, and there is no possible way that an enterprise architect can do all of the things that I just mentioned. Not a criticism, but a realization. I hope this helps some of the confusion that's out there. Please contact us. We'd be more than happy to discuss this in more detail with you. Thanks again. Until next time, stay healthy, stay well, and do some real architecture.
Thank you for tuning in to Real Talk. Be sure to join your host, Sam Holcman, again for another edition of our program. We'll have more real topics of discussion then.